Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Virtually Speaking series. Tonight, we're joined by Latimer parent and legendary actor Jason Isaacs, who will share some insights into his career. When Jason's not being a full-time Latimer parent or pretending to be other people, he generously dedicates much of his time to supporting many wonderful charities, and we're so grateful he could be here with us tonight. You might know him as Malfoy from Harry Potter, Colonel Tavington from the Patriot, Marshal Zhukov in The Death of Stalin, or Vasily in Hotel Mumbai. I've heard he was also in a little-known television series called Star Trek Discovery, but you may know him as fellow Latimer parent. Before we hear from Jason, I wanted very briefly to tell you a little bit about the Virtually Speaking series. We launched this program of online talks over the summer as a way of bringing the Latimer community together in the absence of our usual social events. And it's really taken off. The series is such an impressive showcase of our community. Teachers, alumni, and parents, all giving talks of really high caliber. If you haven't already, I'd encourage you to take a look at the full Virtually Speaking collection on our website, where the whole series is available. Now, of course, these events are also fundraisers, and I wanted to thank our speakers, without whom this series would not have been possible, and you, the audience, for supporting the talks. Many of you kindly made a donation when registering for this evening, which has raised over £700 for this year's annual bursaries appeal. Just fantastic, so thank you so much. We hope to raise enough money to fund another 5 pupils through this appeal for entry next September. So finally, a couple of house rules for this evening's talk. Everyone will be on mute, so you can all hear Jason clearly. Do please feel free to type questions in the chat facility so that Jason can review and answer as many as time allows at the end of his talk. So it just remains for me to welcome Jason and hand over to him.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to my loft. It's kind of strange. I want to say thanks for coming, but thanks for staying in and giving some money to this fabulous cause. If nothing else comes out of this evening, you've given some money to a fabulous cause, even though you've had to listen to me witter on. I don't know how everyone else's lockdown has been, but I've done a lot of this, a lot of Zoom stuff, and generally people are talking back to me. I'm not used to talking to myself in my loft, so forgive me. I think the title of the talk was, I can't remember, something like, I'm not sure who I am, or something equally neurotic, and I think that's fair enough. If we were in a crowd somewhere, and I've done that before, I would be trying to make you laugh, because that's what I've done since I was a kid, to get out of awkward situations or getting beaten up. But I can't see your faces, so I don't know if you're just all already nodded off or left, or have left a cardboard thing there. So I might get slightly more pretentious than that, and do forgive me. There's no one here to stop me. My wife is downstairs, and my daughter is mortified that it's happening at all. I'm a Latimer dad. I've got 2 kids there. One's left and is going to university on Friday, and the other is praying to God there's a power cut and this ends right now. I came to pick her up the other day, and I parked opposite the school at Cafe Chino, and she came out. She couldn't see me. She's milling around with a bunch of kids, and I waved. And from across the room, I saw her face go dark purple, and literally, I think I saw smoke come out of her ears, and she bent over double, crippled with embarrassment. So this is really the worst thing that could ever happen to her. So if you're in year 11 with Ruby, or your kids are, please make sure they go up to her tomorrow and go, oh my God, your dad was like so embarrassing last night. He talked about you as well. So that would be great. There's half an hour. My wife used to make documentaries, and she would get the most extraordinary people to talk about themselves on camera. And I was always amazed that she could get people to talk about criminal acts that they'd done, or prostitutes they'd been to, whatever. And I said, how did you persuade them to sign a release? She said, people have an infinite capacity to find themselves interesting. So forgive me, when and if we meet and are sitting at a dinner table, I'll be listening to you. I see a lot of people have not switched their cameras on. Interesting. Wonder if you're even really there. Do switch your camera on so I can see your face if you wouldn't mind. You don't have to. Hello, thanks for waving. So I think I should probably start, if this is akin to a therapy session. What you probably want is just scandalous stories about celebrities, you know, as if we were on a kind of X-rated Jonathan Ross somewhere. But I've no doubt there are libel lawyers here and probably journalists somewhere, so I'm not quite sure that's the wisest move. My daughter said, whatever you do, don't be funny, don't swear, and don't tell any stories about famous people. So I'm going to break all those rules. But just a couple of minutes about why I ended up doing this strange job. This wasn't a world I was born into. There's that strange, lazy journalism you see where people go, oh, no, it's just a guy from Oklahoma, just a girl from Leeds. Everybody's just someone from somewhere. I came from a world where nobody did creative things. Nobody played an instrument, barely read books. We watched the telly, went to pantomime once a year. That was my theatre fix. And certainly nobody did anything artistic for a living. So it was beyond imagination. My dad left school at 15, worked, and my brothers and I were the first to go to university, and we were going to do something vocational. We'd do better than our parents. And I went to study law originally. But as a teenager, I had always felt just uncomfortable. I just always faked it. Now, I think everybody fakes it. One of the great things about my job is I get to shadow politicians and drug dealers and surgeons, and I'm around often authority figures now, having played generals and captains, and it's been a long time that I've been aware that we're all pretending. You don't need to pretend to be a grown-up when you are a grown-up, but people in their 20s and 30s, 40s do. People at my age are happy to be childish. When I was a kid, I always felt like I missed I was either missing the gene or I missed the class at school where life was explained. And so I became, in every social encounter, what I thought was required of me. And so I don't know if anyone knows who Mark Kermode is, Britain's best, most famous and most successful film reviewer. And I was at school with him, and he wrote an autobiography in which he described me, and I don't recognize it at all, described this very, very confident person who would breeze into school with a skateboard. Apparently I swore even then in front of the teacher one time, and made an indelible impression on him. I remember being terrified that every day was a kind of minefield. And I was a teenager when the NF were on the rise, rather similar, smoke in the air at the moment. But and I was a very mouthy, or I probably was a very obnoxious, quite small, quite weedy Jewish boy with some very loud yobs around me who were all touting NF things. So I very quickly teamed up with my friend who was just a very large black man from Sierra Leone who was like a 30-year-old trapped in a 17-year-old's body. And I was the mouth and he was the fists. And that was how I got through school. But there were many different crowds I moved in, had different voices, even different accents. So I went to a school called Haberdashers, and there was a certain accent that was required there. And then I would go and skate in the South Bank when I was 15, tell my parents I was staying at school for rugby or something. And I would change clothes and I would become Ali G, a precursor to Ali G, because I was the only white kid who was skating there at the time. And I went to university. I'll whiz through to the famous people taking crack in a second. And I went to university, and everybody spoke like Hugh Grant, and I'd never heard those accents before, except on the young ones, on sketches. And so I spoke like that within 5 seconds. And I went to a secondhand shop and I bought all tuxedos, and I tried to disappear, become invisible in that crowd of. It was the year that the Sloane Ranger Handbook was published. I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember that, but all of the people who were in the Sloane Ranger Handbook were in my hall of residence at university. That's what it was like. So I became double-barreled instead of North London kind of Jewish nouveau riche, and within a couple of weeks, staggering around drunk, unfortunately the experience that freshers today are not having, mixing, trying to find my crowd, trying to find my people. I was staggering around the Union building. There was a sign saying, "Can you do a Northern accent?" Well, I'm from Liverpool, and I spent years hiding it. And it was the one thing I could do with any confidence and authenticity. So I staggered into this room. I read an obscene passage out in a completely uninhibited way because it was subsidized beer. And I was in a play, and that was it for me. I found my place. I found my people. I found where I belonged. It was in a room of people who were exploring what it means to be us. And that's what rehearsals are. That's what stories are. That's what narrative is. It's just what makes a human being, what makes us love, hate, what makes us angry, what makes us jealous, what makes us, what are we giving out? What's really going on for us that we think, what are subtext, and actually what's going on for us on the level we don't understand about ourselves. And that's what we do in a rehearsal room. And I found it intoxicating. I couldn't get enough. And I did play after play after play. I completely neglected my law degree, which they eventually gave me, I think, just because they didn't want to have a failure on the books. But I went to the Edinburgh Festival every summer, and I went to fringe festivals and theatre festivals. And when it came to the end of drama school, I was going to settle down and do whatever it was expected of someone like me, first generation university student, and go and get a proper job. But my mates were auditioning for drama school. And it seemed the height of hubris to me because, I played a bit of football. I'm from Liverpool. I played for the law club, but I wasn't going to write to Man United or Liverpool and see if I could get a trial. People who did artistic things for a living were born of something else, came from a different planet. But it was only 10 quid to audition for drama schools. And so I came and auditioned, and I got a recall, did the recall. And I vividly remember the woman called Jane Cowell, this very tall, stentorian, Julie Andrews sounding lady who was a voice coach, coming out of Central. I thought I'd get a letter if I got in. I'd keep it, put it on the wall of my chambers or something, or my kids would discover it in a trunk in the attic. But instead, she came out and she said, "We'd very much like to offer you a place in September." And I went, "Oh, wow." And she went, "I hope you're not f***ing us around." And I went, she went, "There's thousands of people apply for these places, And I said, no, I'd love to. I'm just so flattered. It's amazing." And I remember walking down the street at Eaton Avenue in Swiss Cottage thinking, have I just decided the course of the rest of my life because I want to be an actor, or because a posh woman swore at me? I've never experienced that before. And I'm still not sure. I don't know. But I thought maybe I'll do it for a little bit and then I'll settle down and do what most people in the world, most of my family, everyone I know, which is a proper job. But I need to do a job in the theatre first. And I did one. I need to do a job on telly first. Well, I need to have a lead first. I need to be in a movie first. I should go to America. And now it's too late to do a proper job. So I'm screwed. And I've been very lucky that it's gone quite well. But one of the reasons I think it's gone well is I'm relentlessly curious about what everyone is thinking when I'm talking to them, what it is that they're hiding from me. So early on, one of my first jobs out of drama school was in a series called Capital City. It was a huge break for a young actor because I was on camera for 2 years. Actually, it was on film in those days. And we shot in Elstree Studios. It was the crew that shot Star Wars. And it was about this new emerging financial sector in London that no one really knew about. It hadn't been on telly. And we got to go down there. And I discovered something that has never left me, which is that the best bit of acting is when you go and watch people and you hang around with them because they tell you things they would never tell anyone else. So I went down, and I'm hoping I'm not in any way maligning any of your lifestyles here, but in those days, in the late 80s and early 90s, the city was awash with cocaine and champagne and prostitutes, and it was a revoltingly misogynist place. And it was incredibly high energy. It was like a battlefield. And so I just went and soaked it up. In fact, lots of people I'd been at university with and done law with had gone into the city. So I just kind of melded into that world and became friends and just kind of hung out invisibly. And then when we got to shoot the thing, I had a bunch of I picked up some of the language and the body language stuff. So I remember that people used to bounce their legs. There was so much cocaine use, people bounce their legs all the time. They couldn't keep still. So I bounced my leg. I thought it was a pretty cool thing to do. And on about the third week, maybe the third or fourth episode, one of the cameraman said to me, "Mate, you might want to not do that with your leg in the close-up." I said, "Yeah, but they do it. They'll do it all the time again." Yeah, but it looks like you might. Well, thanks very much. Thanks for waiting that long to tell me. But I did. So this story of my career, such as it is a series of unbelievably lucky stumbling accidents. So I was in that show. I was not one of the leads. I was a kind of small part of the ensemble. There was one episode in 2 seasons they gave me to be all about me. And there was an American producer stuck in his hotel in London. It rained so hard the planes couldn't take off. Just like when there were the wrong type of leaves on the line. And he switched the telly on, and he saw me, and he thought it was my show. He thought I was the lead in the show. So he got in touch with me, represented me, and said, you have to come to LA. They're going to eat you up there. So I went to stay with him. I think I might be a bit more suspicious nowadays and do a bit of research. But anyway, I went to stay with him. I got a cab from the airport. I walked in. He was watching television in his underwear. And it was the Larry King beating. Larry King? Rodney King. Jesus Christ. Sorry about that, Larry and Rodney. It was the Rodney King beating live on ABC, the first. And I walked in the door. I was trying to process there was a man and his wife fronts, and there was somebody getting beaten to an inch of their life. on television. I went, what is this? And he said, this is live, it's news. And I watched it with horror, thinking, should I have come here? I assumed the streets would be awash with guns and violence anyway. And I watched this thing, and before the broadcast was over, this man was on the phone to his lawyer, trying to see if he could get the life rights or sell a version without the life rights to television of a kind of TV movie of Rodney King's life. It's an indication early on of what LA runs on, how it runs. This guy was not near the top of the pyramid. If he was making the phone call, 300,000 other people making the same phone call. So he took me, this is my very first night in LA. He had to go to somewhere at the studios. I went for a walk to the supermarket at the corner. I thought I'd buy some flowers or chocolates. I didn't arrive with anything. I walked 100 yards and I was stopped by the police because they said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to the supermarket. They said, where's your car? And I said, well, I'm staying in that house. Why are you walking? And I went, because I'm staying in that house. And the supermarket's over there. And they went, well, there's no sidewalk here. These are people's gardens. So anyway, Los Angeles, I spent a lot of time, I don't know who here has spent a lot of time there. It looks like our land. It is not our land. And then I worked a lot and I couldn't get a job to play anyone with teeth in it. This lovely man in Capital City was everyone's best friend, and he didn't have any sex, and the others were having sex like rabbits every episode. And I'm desperate to do something. And I went to the producers and I begged them to give me some kind of affair with someone, man, woman, you know, inanimate object, anybody. And they didn't have gay couples on TV in those days, so that was rejected. And they said, well, you're everyone's best friend. They don't think of you as sexual. That's not how the audience think of you. And I remember going that my career turned. I went one day for an audition for a thing called Soldier, which was a soap about soldiers, and a thing called Civvies, which was a very hard-hitting Lyndall Plant show about parachute regiment soldiers with PTSD who came back from the Falklands. PTSD wasn't even a phrase then, I don't think, but who were badly damaged that she knew. I went to the Soldier one, and they phoned my agent. They went, you know, he's lovely, Jace. He's really nice. I just don't think he's army material. He's a bit too nice. And I went to the Civvies one, and the casting director, God bless her, phoned and said, the director doesn't understand drama. He comes from documentaries. Tell him to be the character. So I walked in, gruff and monosyllabic and rude and slightly disturbed. And I got the job, and then I get to go and it turned everything around for me. Since then, I played a succession of, I mean, many other things too, but there's always been on hand a lot of disturbed and damaged, violent macho men, which anybody who knows me would find ludicrous. I asked the producer, I said, I don't know any soldiers, and I don't know in the army. She said, but you said it in the audition, you said that you consider going to the army and your brother's in the army. And I went, yeah, that was a lie. I just lied. I don't. So she arranged a bunch of parachute regiment soldiers and SAS guys to take me and the rest of the cast to the Brecon Beacons and kind of beast us for a week. But the rest of the cast dropped out. So there was just me. And they took me up there, and they completely forgot I was there, and I nearly died. It was incredibly interesting and useful. And we were blowing away like feathers. We're tying each other down. At one point, we were in outside this cave, and one man had just told a story about going to the Falklands early, 3 weeks before the task force got there, and at night sabotaging and killing as many people as he could and blowing things up, and then during the day lying in ditches covered in the entrails of the people he killed for warmth. And he was telling this story with glee, and it was obviously impressive and terrifying. And then the colonel in charge of us said, guys, it's too cold. We're going to double up in the sleeping bags. And that's who I doubled up with. So that's baptism of fire. And it was an early lesson, I think, in dealing with the press as well, because it was about how damaged and how little there was officially for men who came back from war. You know, there were no kind of transition periods, and no one understood the nature of trauma in the same way that they do now. And when we told the story, there were questions in Parliament, and various newspapers went to serving men and went to serving generals and asked if it was an accurate picture, and they were told, no, it's disgusting and it's a lie. And so it was an early introduction to an interesting relationship with the press. I think it takes a while before you understand that what you say is the only thing they can write down, and it's not a normal relationship. I'm mentioning it because I was on Lorraine yesterday morning, that hard-hitting morning television show, and I was promoting the Great Ormond Street Hospital charity run. And she said, how's lockdown been? And I said, well, you know, it's fine. I just was working on a set, and it's fine. I'm a bit freaked out about the people not wearing masks. You know, I always think they should be in the stocks or in prison. Well, actually, it's not that. The people who wear masks with their noses out or pull them down to talk to you, they should be, you know, hanging in the streets. Clearly not meaning those things. Well, those comments have been picked up, and I've been around for long enough to know that you shouldn't say things like that. And they're in Breitbart in the Daily Mail, and now 1,000 other outlets, and I've been dealing with that all day. But it's been 30 odd years since I've been that stupid. So if any of you read that today, I didn't mean it. So I started playing these tough guys and getting a lot of them. And so I started hanging around with tough guys and getting to be with career criminals and getting to be with people who are in and out of prison. And I found it fascinating because I've been frightened by people like that all my life. I still find it very frightening because I have an enormous propensity to violence. But it was to see how somebody who thinks nothing of doling out extreme violence, see how sensitive they are, how close to tears they are so often, how the most innocent of slights can drive them to what we think of as psychotic behavior. And it's all there in their childhood. So anyway, let's get to, the Patriot. How about that? So I think I might even have a picture. I've got pictures to share. I just don't particularly want to be clicking buttons. Well, that's not him. That's the guy from Harry Potter. I don't see him. You have to imagine him. So I get a call saying they'd like you to audition for a film, a bad guy opposite Mel Gibson. You're not going to get the job. I went, okay, that sounds good. They said, it's on offer to Jude Law. They just want to make him sign for less money. But put yourself on tape, at least you'll get to be seen. So I put myself on tape in my front room, and then they phone and they go, they want to fly to Los Angeles. You're not going to get the job, though. It's Jude's job. It's just, once he finds out you're flying, he's going to say yes to the job. I'm like, I know Jude. I could just call him. No, don't call him. Don't call him. So I fly to Los Angeles. I go in and have this lovely meeting. They're all, Los Angeles, you can get yes to death everywhere you go, even at Starbucks. So they all yesed me to death, and I left the room. And the agents called. They go, how was it? And I go, well, I don't know. Apparently I'm not going to get the job. They go, no, they like you. I got this job, and I arrive on the set, and there is Mel Gibson. Now, Mel Gibson is a man people always ask me about, because he's been quite controversial in his time. He's said and done some crazy things, but I found it to be completely delightful. We went there early, me and Mel and Heath Ledger, and we rode horses, and we shot and fired and loaded muskets, and we did sword fighting every day for a month. And every night we'd be back in the hotel going, we're getting paid for this. Unbelievable. And then we started making the film, and they did this extraordinary thing. And I don't know if there are any directors watching or writers. It was an amazing thing, because clearly on the great totem pole of Hollywood life, I was nowhere. And they gave me a place at the top table. So they said, at every point they went, what do you think of this scene? Do you like it? Do you want to change it? Do you want to do something else? And they didn't know what they were unleashing. And so we invented a whole backstory and a whole bunch of other stuff. But one of the things that bothered me in that film is that halfway through, I'm meant to be scared of Mel. I said, well, I'm the bad guy. Stories have value in the world, but they only have value if they hold your interest. As soon as the bad guy's scared, the story's over. And there's a scene in which he walks up to me and he goes, before this war is over, I'm going to kill you. And in the script, it said, I stepped back and looked down, or he looked at my feet or something, shuffled as he walks off. I've got hundreds of soldiers there. I said to the director, I don't reckon I don't like that. He goes, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know, something else. He goes, well, don't tell Mel, just do it. And I went, you sure? He said, yeah, be fine. So Mel comes up to me and he goes, he looks around, there's 500 soldiers, he can't attack me. He goes, before this war is over, I'm going to kill you. And I took my sword out and I turned it around and offered the handle. I said, why wait? And he looked at me and I thought he was going to headbutt me. He started growling. And he looked over his shoulder, looked at everyone else. He looked over at the director, and he just went, soon. And he walked off, and the director went, cut. And I ran up to him in a voice about 3 octaves higher than my own. I went, Mel, I'm so sorry. He told me to do that. I promise you. He told me. And he went, I loved it. I loved it. We should do more of that. So he and I became firm friends. A few months in, I said to him, we're standing there playing Scrabble. There's a lot of waiting around playing Scrabble on film sets. I said, hey, Mel, where's the crazy conspiracy theorist, kind of homophobe, anti-Semite, lunatic guy? He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I've read all the stuff about you. I know who you, interviews you've given. And we've been hanging out for a long time. We play golf at dinner. Where is he? He said, that stuff you read in the press. I said, yeah, all right. Let's talk politics for 2 minutes. And behind his back, the director and the producer were going. And within 2 minutes, I was going, you've got to be kidding me. You don't believe that, do you? You don't actually believe that's the way the world works. He went, you're crazy if you don't. If you don't understand, that's how the world works. So he's a complicated guy. And when people ask me what he's like, or what anyone's like, what Daniel's like, or what Bruce Willis is like, or someone, the answer is you can't sum anybody up in a sentence. So the night that he was arrested for his crazy anti-Semitic hijinks up in on Mulholland Drive, he'd just come from my friend's house, who has an Orthodox Jewish wife, and he's godparent to their daughter, and he'd taken her a present, and then he drank a bottle of tequila and did that stuff. So it's a complicated world. Anyway, we do the Patriot, and I get offered every single Nazi in the world after that, which for a Jewish man is it's an odd experience. I decided not to do those things. I decided instead to play a transvestite, which I don't think I'd be allowed to play today. I'm not quite sure. In a film with Keanu Reeves and Charlize Theron, who was 21 and held all of the crew in the palm of her hand. But before that, I did a play at the Royal Court. And I'm telling this story because it's still legend of the Royal Court. There was it's at the time they were negotiating Stormont, and a lot of Irish politicians and a lot of people, militia from both sides, came to see the play. I was the only everyone else was from Belfast. They'd done it there. I think they were doing it at the Royal Court. It's about the Troubles, and it ends with a long silence. Someone's been interrogated all the way through the play. There's a long silence set in the 70s where someone finally cracks and admits they're a member of the UDA. And we're doing the play, and they suspended the kind of fire marshal's rules. So people sitting in the aisles, and you knew that these were people in the negotiations, and people whose families were involved and stuff. And we earned this silence with 2 hours of intense drama. And we're in the silence, and somebody's phone starts ringing. And you can hear it. And it was on one of those old Nokias had ascending rings. It's getting louder, and it was getting louder. And they weren't answering it. And the silence that we'd earned was going away, and it got louder, until I was about to turn around and scream at the audience. And I realized, it's my phone in my pocket, my wife calling me. Of course, she thinks the play's over. And I can't remember, I think I opened it and went, put it away. But everyone knows they don't have Nokias in the 1970s. And for years after that, I went to the Royal Court. Even if there was an 18-year-old taking tickets, they go, oh, are you the Jason Isaacs with the... Yeah. Anyway, I did that. And I had notes of things of enormous import to tell you. That's of consequence. Yeah. So then, instead of ambling through, I want to talk for a second about stories. I was embarrassed to do this for a living. I'm slightly embarrassed to give this talk. You know, I was on holiday a couple of years ago, and somebody came up and went, "Hey, Jace, how are you? I haven't seen you for years." And I said, "Good, good." He said, "How's the acting?" I don't watch anything. Is it still? It's going all right? And I went, "Yeah, it's good. How's you?" Not having a clue who it was. And she went, "I'm so desperate to get out of it. Desperate to get out of it, but nobody else can do the transplants. So I've got to teach enough people." I went, "Right." And I still don't know who that was, but she's doing transplants. I know that. It felt much more significant than what I do. But over the years, particularly now when no one believes in a fact, when you can't trust or are being told not to trust either politicians or experts, somehow I think narrative and stories, which we've always done, we've always gathered around fires to tell stories, provide people with a template. And I've certainly experienced now, after the Potters and even Star Trek, they many times provide people with a life raft or some light in the dark, and help people through some very dark times. So it was 1992, and I was asked to be in Angels in America. Angels in America, for those of you who don't know, it's a terrible shame that you don't know. It's the greatest play written in the English language in the last 100 years, I would say. And it was at the time we did it, it was incredibly timely. It's a gay fantasia, I think it was he called it, but it's 7 hours of epic political drama. It's hysterically funny. People are falling out of their seats, crying with laughter, and then choking with sobs, and being made to think. And it's 2 3.5 hour plays. A lot of nudity, a lot of sex. A lot of people bought season tickets to the National Theatre thinking it was some kind of musical. They came in their velvet jackets. They'd sit there and it would unfold. And at first you could see they were desperate to see, could they get out in time? But then it hooked everyone. So my parents' friends who said, "Well, just buy tickets for the first one." Well, I said, "Don't worry, I'll get you tickets for both." And they always stayed all the way through. Daniel Craig and I were lovers throughout it. We had hours and hours of sex on stage. It's one of the reasons when journalists ever asked why I'm not the bad guy in a Bond film, it's because I think the publicity might be slightly skewed. I remember one day Salman Rushdie, the VAT was out in Salman Rushdie came and sat in the third row and we were in the wings. And I came on and did the first scene. And all of us, it was such a powerful experience for everybody in the audience and all of us in the play that every night, even for a year, we didn't go back to our dressing rooms. We stayed and watched the other scenes to police the integrity of it in some strange way. Anyway, I come off in the wings, everyone's there, and everyone went, "Did you see who's in the third row?" I said, "Salman Rushdie." Well, we all thought Salman Rushdie was there. Clearly, he's going to leave at the interval because otherwise someone could blow up the theatre. No, Salman Rushdie stayed for the entire 7 hours, including coming back. His two special branch officers really did not want to see that men having that much sex on stage. That was not what they'd signed up for in their protective duty. And by the end, we had them sobbing too, which felt like some kind of triumph. But towards the end of that run, I was sitting in the wings, and the two older actors in it, Harry Taub and Susan Engel, walked by, and they said, "You're right, Jace." I said, "Yeah, I was just thinking that whatever else happens to me in my career, nothing will ever touch this. Nothing could ever touch anything like this." Now, you would think that they would, people wouldn't say, "Don't be silly, you know, you've got your whole life ahead of you, you're only 25 or 30. And they went, "Yeah, we were just saying how glad we are it's come to the end of our careers." Thanks guys. But they were right. There's never been anything like it. And if you get a chance to see it or read it, you should. It's a work of absolute genius. So skipping things, just give me a bunch of films and television. I remember Paul Greengrass is a friend of mine. I knew him before he was the world's biggest action director, when he was scraping himself through World and Action docs. No, he used to do real life stories. Came to me one day, said, "You any good at football?" And I went, "What, like playing with you or putting on telly?" He said, "Putting on telly." And I went, "No, it would be a disaster." He said, "All right, well, we won't put any football in it. I want you to play a footballer." And he'd done a real life story about a guy called Tony Kay, played for Everton and Sheffield. And he had been one of the best players in the country. But at the time when there was a £10 maximum wage, a cap on all players, he was the first person to break through, got £100 a week. And the authorities hated him. The people who owned football clubs hated him. And to supplement the wages in those days, all the players used to bet in the dressing room on other games or anything. They had bookies going around the dressing room. And he had been caught, or rather a bookie had been caught and had slips from every single player in the Premier League. So he said to the police, "Look, I've got a record of everyone. Don't prosecute me, prosecute these people." And the Premier League got together with the police and they went, "Well, you can prosecute them all. There'll be no English football ever again. So it's up to you." Everybody was in there. I don't want to name names, but you know, all the 66 World Cup squad. So they picked this guy and two others. They're obnoxious. And we told his story. And when it finished, he had gone to Spain because I think he'd sold someone a diamond, which wasn't a diamond, and had to be on the run for 20 or 30 years. He said, if anyone asks you if I'm here, I'm not here. I'm not visiting. I'm not here. I'm sure. I was in the sauna in the Adelphi in Liverpool, and someone sat next to me, big guy with a big gold bracelet on, necklace on, in the sauna. Who wears a medal in the sauna? He said to me, "You that actor, are you?" I said, "Yeah." "You're doing the story of Tony Kay?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah." "Is he around, Tony?" I said, "No, I haven't seen this yet." "Tell him Mick says hello, you know, remembers him fondly." I went, "Yeah, no, I will. Tony was none too pleased. Anyway, he came to the screening, Tony, big orange sunglasses on. He's a very dour Yorkshireman, who even at 66, I think he was so upset the doctor just said he had to stop playing 3 times a week, just loved football. You know, there's big orange sunglasses like Sunny Man had. You couldn't see his face. And we had a screening. We were very nervous, Paul and I, about what he'd think. And we went over at the end and we said, "You all right, Tony?" That's, you know, because he's been laid bare, he's philandering and everything else and blowing his career. And he went, "How do you know all that?" Paul said, "Well, you told me, mate. I mean, you know, we had like 20 visits to the pub. I wrote everything down. I taped it." And he said, "No, I told you what happened. Never told you how it felt." And that, for me, is in some ways why I tell stories. I think that's why we tell stories. That's why we like to watch stories, why we can even submit ourselves to stories that are not fun and light. Sometimes we submit ourselves to very dark stories because we feel less alone when we know that we're not the only people that feel these strange, contradictory things. I remember that so vividly. we did, I'm trying to remember the order of things. It doesn't matter the order of things. But at some point, they came to me and said, would you like to be in Harry Potter? No, they didn't. They said, I got an audition for Harry Potter. And I auditioned for, what's his name? Gilderoy Lockhart. Didn't audition for the part I ended up playing. This guy, I can do my click. Here we go. There it is. And I click this. And then, now you see that went wrong immediately. Onto Zoom. Talk amongst yourselves, read a magazine, share screen. Pointless this. If you don't know who it is, it's not going to help you now, is it? That bloke. Anyway, that's what I ended up playing. But I auditioned for Gilderoy Lockhart, the rather flamboyant, entertaining, vain nincompoop. And I went in there and I was fabulous. I was so good. I was a fabulous version of myself. And Chris Columbus, who's a delightful director, said, it was wonderful. It was so great. It's just terrific. Would you mind reading a different part as well? Lucius Malfoy, did you read the script? And I thought to myself, I don't think I should play two parts in the same film. That would be, I'm not sure that would be a good idea. But, you know, and then it dawned on me in the same instant, I wasn't going to get Gilderoy Lockhart. And I certainly wasn't going to get it if I read Lucius Malfoy. I said, well, I just, you know, and he said, well, I mean, you don't have to, but if you want to go outside, think about it for 10 minutes. I said, yeah. You know, I went outside and I called my agent and I went, listen, they want me to read for a different part. He said, we'll do it. I said, no, I'm not going to get Gilderoy Lockhart if I do that. And he goes, you don't know that. It'd be your choice. I said, I'm not doing it. Now, I just agreed to play Peter Pan play Captain Hook in Peter Pan. And it was a year in Australia. And I said, I'm not playing two bad guys in a row. I'm not playing two children's bad guys. And my agent is Alan Rickman's agent. He said, Alan did Die Hard and Sheriff of Nottingham. And I went, well, that's all very well for Alan, but I'm not doing it. And he said, well, what are you going to say? I said, I'm going to say no. And just then the assistant came to the door and said, you ready? And I went, yeah, sure. And I went in and I was so bitter. I think I was so bitter. I barely spoke through gritted teeth. And they offered me the part that when I went home. And I said to my agent to say no. And he said, no, just think about it. I said, you told me I could say no. He said, well, yeah, but take the weekend. I said, I don't need the weekend. I'm not playing two children's villains. And over the weekend, my nephews called me. My nieces called me. My godchildren called me. Strangers called me. Everybody I knew called me to tell me I had to do it. Not because they gave me monkeys about my career, because they wanted to visit the set. That's why. And I took it, and it was obviously one of the wisest moves in my life. And it was interesting. The most interesting thing about being in those Harry Potter films, apart from watching the lovely kids grow up, is to see the effect that's done. You know, I was aware of it before from plays a little bit. There are one-off stories. Over the years now, I've met so many thousands. I mean, there are millions, hundreds of millions of Harry Potter fans around the world. People, countries that you wouldn't think would take this English boarding school story to heart, who've literally had their life saved by it. It's provided them with a community, or provided them with some sense that they weren't the only people who thought like that. It's put the sense of inclusion, and just the power of stories, of good stories, what they can do, how they can lift you. I remember going in though and thinking, looking at the list of the cast, thinking, everybody I've ever worshipped is in this film. How will people even remember I was in it? I went for the first meeting for the costumes and the hair, and they had a sketch of me in a suit, looking like this. And I said, what's that? And they said, this is the clothes. The director's seen the sketches, he approved them. And I went, yeah, I was thinking I could wear like fur and ermine and velvet and stuff. And they went, why would you don't like the suit? I said, I don't think he's a businessman. I think he hates muggles. He wants to dress like a wizard. They went, well, we don't have anything like that. And I said, well, I could just take like that curtain. I took a curtain down, wrapped it around me. It's going to show the director. And I went to the makeup department and they said, I think you're good. I think you're good as you are. Just made a bit of powder. And I went, what about a wig? They said, well, you've got a lovely head of hair. And I said, no, but a long, like a blonde wig. They said, what do you want a blonde wig for? I said, because my son is blonde. And they went, and? I went, and I wouldn't have my hair cut like a muggle. And they said, well, Dumbledore's got a wig. I said, what do you want, low on the budget? You can afford more than one wig. And they didn't have anything, but they had a kind of tinfoil, like Halloween thing on a stand. I said, let me just take that. I took it, went down to the set to see Chris Columbus, who just so happens was shooting a Gilderoy Lockhart scene with the Pixies. And the AD said, we got Jason here for a quick look. And he goes, where? I go, it's me. Hi, mate. And he went, is that a curtain? I go, yes, no, this is a curtain, but I'm saying on the day they would make something more kind of aristocratic and flamboyant. He goes, what's on your head? I said, an indication again of what would be, if we have time, a lovely wig, like a long blonde wig. 'Cause I wouldn't want to get my hair cut like a muggle. And he went, okay, sure. Anything else? And I said, yeah, I was thinking of a cane, like a walking cane, like a shooting stick, but with my wand inside it. And he said, no, that's, we have a convention, like the wands just appear. We don't know where they come from. They're just like, I go, oh, I've seen it. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. I was thinking mine could appear from my cane. And he said, I think the toy guys are going to love you. And sure enough, they've sold millions on. There was a time, even when he flew on British Airways, they had that kind of Sky Mall thing there. Obviously, space is limited on airplanes, so they take only perfume, sunglasses, razors, and Lucius Malfoy's wand. Who knew? But anyway, so I did that, and I did Peter Pan at the same time in the middle. And I should probably stop in a minute, but so I'm going to talk. I went to live in Australia for a year for Peter Pan. That's all I can tell you. It went 6 months over budget, $80 million over. We lived on a beach. It was a house they'd rented for Brad Pitt, and he dropped out of a film. So I got a house way above my pay grade. And they kept on coming to me and going, mate, I'm really sorry. I think it's probably going to be like another 2 or 3 months. And I go, all right, fine. They go, we'll give you more tickets to fly your friends and family out. I went, yeah, all right, fine. So I would still be making that film if I could. It was a marvelous experience. So I think I've managed to get away without defaming too many of the crack addicts. My business has a terrible reputation for infidelity and drug abuse and alcohol and all the rest of it. And I found that not to be the case. I think that when being away on location is a very destabilizing thing for all the people involved. Everybody, doesn't matter what department they're in. But I would urge this. Well, we're going to do Q&As now if you've got any questions about anything or anyone you want to ask. But I would say this: anything you read anywhere in the press about anyone is probably books. That's all I would say, because every project I've ever had to publicize is the best thing I've ever been in, and they're all delightful people, and it's an incredibly creative atmosphere on set. And woe betide anybody that ever tells the truth. I can't wait for the day that they go, it's over. We're putting your card back in. You got your expiry date, and I can start telling the truth. And I hope you'll all join me on Zoom that day, because it'll be a very different story. But thank you anyway for that. Now, I'm looking at stuff on the chat. I don't know, Ruby, if you want to come in and ask them, or if I can look at the questions myself.
Yeah. So thank you so much, and we can open up for questions now. What I'll do is I'll just ask you to unmute, and you can ask your question. The first question we have is from JC. So JC, can you unmute yourself?
Oh, I see it. Hi. What?
Hello.
Hiya.
I'm not showing you me though.
No, you're not, are you? What are you in some outlandish costume? What's?
No, I'm in my tracksuit.
So am I, out of camera.
Actually, I just wanted to ask you, the way I phrased it was, has COVID impacted on your career or current projects, etc.? But what I also wanted to know is, have you got any ideas to do something that is slightly innovative as a result of COVID? I was just thinking about Stage that was on the television recently, which was amazing.
I think I think the public have a limited appetite for stuff that is shot on Zoom and Skype, or shot by people, handheld. I wonder how many of these kind of Blair Witch Zoom things will do. Stage was fabulous. And actually that director has written something I'm hoping to do next year. But has it impacted it completely crippled the industry and shut it down, but we are now shooting again. I just did a bit on sex education. I'm going to Hungary on Saturday to shoot. There are very elaborate protocols in place. They're doing the best they can. It's 3 or 4 days quarantine with 2 tests. We all know it should be 2 weeks quarantine. The fact is that I'm sure we have some scientists here. I'd love someone to join in. As I understand it, everyone is now more and more coming to the realization that it's an airborne virus, far more than fomital transmission. So all the wiping down and disinfectants is COVID theater. It doesn't really do anything. Mask, if you're in an unventilated place, then unless you've got your head inside a plastic bag, you're going to be in trouble if someone's infected. So the best thing to do is be outdoors. I'm hoping someone offers me a Western, because I'm about to go and shoot some scenes in a dance hall and told all the extras have been tested. It has affected things enormously. But most people who are writing, it's been a very busy time for the industry writing and preparing things to make. And as all the projects I've been around and the people I know who are making them are loath to put COVID in the scripts, because by the time they get made, then they come out, nobody's really going to look back. And there are some specific lockdown projects, but mostly not. I think what's going to be interesting is the world we emerge into will be very different economically, socially. There may be some radical political changes. And if we're reflecting the world of 2019 back on the screen, holding the mirror up to nature, I think it might be odd, because there'll be it won't be the world that we're living in. I remember, if you remember Boys in the Black stuff and those Bleasdale things, those State of the Nation pieces that used to be written. I wonder what state our nation and the world will be in. And it's very hard for writers to predict that. So there's a lot of writing going on, which doesn't feature COVID or COVID consequences at all. I wonder what it's going to be like when we watch them.
No, thanks for that.
So
I'm sure you look great in your sweatpants.
I'm just going to read this next one because I'm not sure who it's from. Are there any plans to film the new Jackson Birdie novel?
No, well, the thing about Jackson Birdie, she's fantastic. Kate Atkinson is one of the funniest women I've ever met. We made her books, all of them, into the Jackson Birdie series 1 and 2. But her Jackson Birdie travels around, has kids, wins the lottery, moves to Paris. Ours had an office in Edinburgh. So bit by bit, her story and our story were so far from each other. She'd come to the set and she'd go, that's ridiculous. She's terrible casting. He'd never wear that. That's stupid. And then the journalists would go, what do you think? And she'd go, oh, they're doing it wonderfully. It's honestly one of the most authentic recreations. Walk away and go, you're all a bunch of idiots. So this Jackson Birdie has had a life so radically different to the Jackson Birdie on screen. And it would be impossible to film that, I think. Although I did love that show. And I did think I'd be doing it forever like Morse. But the regime changed at the BBC. And actually, the second season was put up against, we did 3 movie versions, those prestige slots, like the Sherlock slots. And one went up against Britain's Got Talent, which is a behemoth of a show. The other went up against the British Soap Awards, which is the most popular show of the year. And the other one went up against England versus Brazil, when the grid went down, and even I didn't watch Case Histories. So we did all right considering ratings-wise, but it was like going in the ring with Mike Tyson. So sadly not. I did do the audio book, though, if you feel the need to hear me being Jackson Birdie. I don't know why you would. You could read the book. It's better than that.
Fantastic. Roz Sweeting, do you want to unmute yourself and ask a question about the World Court phone experience?
Yeah.
Thanks, Ruby. Hi, Jason. Thank you
Hi,
so
Roz.
much. Really, really fascinating talk. I was really just wondering whether, despite the Royal Court phone experience, you are tempted to return to the London stage. You spoke passionately about Angels.
I am desperate. I think, there's a lot of high tech. Sorry.
What would be your dream role? Where would you go and what would you do?
Well, the thing is, I remember when we were doing Angels in America, Ian McKellen was doing Richard III. And it was a great production. I saw it at the same time. We were in rep with each other. And I would be in the bar sometimes and I'd listen to people and they'd go, it's wonderful, because I saw Tony Sher at Stratford. It was great with the crutches. But then when you think about it, because I saw Derek did the West End. And when you do plays that exist, not just Shakespeare, plays that have been around, or it's a revival of a play, instead of people being affected by the story and thinking about their own lives and choices they make, or how it makes them think about their parents, their children, or their fears or their hopes, they're very often comparing it to other productions. I do it too. So I like new writing. I love new writing. I'm terrified that the theatre is going to be dead for a long time now, and it's going to be very hard to come back, because a lot of these buildings are going to have to close. Some of the most famous institutions are going to give away secrets, but they're friends of mine. Excuse me. And they and I know that they're hanging on by a thread, and I don't know if they're going to be able to survive. There's nothing like theatre when it works. When it works, when it's gripped everyone in the room. I don't care how high tech. I was with a friend yesterday who is in the VR world and thinks that virtual reality is going to transform the way we do everything, including entertainment. But I challenged him and said, it may be amazing, but when theatre works, when you're in a room, a big dark room with other people, you've signed, that unwritten contract, we're all going to be quiet and focus if you hold our attention. And you're told a story that resonates with humanity. There's nothing like it for inspiring you, for challenging you, but when it's bad or mediocre, I can watch a mediocre film easily. But when the piece of theatre is bad, I feel like someone has stolen 2 hours of my life. And so it better be good. And so I've been offered lots of revivals of things. And I think, what's the point? Someone's spent all that money to come to the West End and parked and come in and they go, oh, look, it's another version of that again. So I think, frankly, you should have a stamp when you've seen any of the classics. a moratorium. You can't see it again for 10 years until you've gone senile enough to forget it. So that's why I'm hoping when we're all going back to the theatre, when I'm going as an audience member, I'll go back on stage.
Thank you. You have an open invitation to come to the Orange Tree in Richmond and do some new writing.
I love that. That is a lovely, it's a fantastic theatre. I hope you manage to keep it going.
Fantastic. We've got lots of questions coming through. Alex wanted to ask a question about what you have in common with some of the baddies you've played. So Alex.
Hi, Jace.
Hiya.
Hi, how are you? Hey.
I did not expect to see you here.
Hi, why not? I mean, it's an open thing, right?
It's an open thing. It's great to see you.
For you guys, the parents there.
Alex is a wonderful, very interesting woman who does an interesting job, but is a fan also, and pops up in extraordinary places like here. Ask the question.
Oh, I'm always there. Yeah, so I was wondering, we all know that you like to play roles that are as far away as possible from the real you, usually.
I don't know if there is a real me anymore. But
that's
yeah.
But what is one thing that you have in common with each of these characters? Hook, Lorcan, and Zhukov.
It's an interesting question. I think that I'm fascinated by psychology. I'm very jealous. I'm upset that Latimer doesn't do it, David, as an A-level, because my daughter would like to do it. But she's thinking of doing it at university. And there was this, I listened to a lot of podcasts, but one I was listening to the other day was about introverts and extroverts, and how there's no one is one or the other. We all flick between the two, depending on context and our mood that day and level of comfort. So Zhukov is a massively arrogant, swaggering brute of a man. That's why I asked for the big padded jacket and the 400 medals and all this stuff. And I don't think I am that. I think I'm really concerned that people like me or think I'm clever or whatever it is. I'm concerned with the impression that I leave. And so it's enormously therapeutic to walk in the shoes of someone who couldn't give a flying what people think about them. That is, everybody should get to do that sometime in their life. We don't get to do it socially. We normally don't get to do it professionally. I get to do that. And I think what some of the antagonists I play have in common with me is that I'd love to be that for a minute. I mean, when I think about it, I wouldn't love to be that. And I don't even know if that is inside me, but some part of it must be inside me. Some part of the cruelty must be inside me when I'm someone who is sadistic. But I do know that when I've played antagonists, one of the things I hope I bring to it, but it's really, it's helped by the script. It has to be the creators have to help you too, is that nobody thinks they're doing the wrong thing. I wish I could remember that when I'm in arguments, when I'm arguing with my wife. I wish I remember that everyone always thinks they're right, because you don't achieve anything. You don't change anyone's mind by telling them they're wrong. Everybody thinks and knows that they're right. They're working in an ethical framework of their own that they've built based on everything that's ever happened to them. And that's what I try and do when I get a part. I go, what's happened to them to make them who they are? What do they think is really going on? And we as an audience might judge something else. So what do I have in common with Hook, for instance? He's a massively theatrical, flamboyant narcissist who's terrified of being exposed for the terrible loser that he is. So that's an enormous stretch, obviously. And Zhukov, I'd love to be that bully. I think I never really grew up. Part of growing up is realizing who you are and being consistent with that and sharing that with the world. I'm not sure I was there that day, and I missed the catalyst. And so I'm still not quite sure who or how. I'm roughly the same person, roughly most of the time. But I'm still deciding who to be when I grow up and I get to play. Is that any kind of answer?
Yes, absolutely.
Really.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
That's great. So let's move on to Claire. Claire had a question for us. So Claire.
Hi, Claire, where are you? I've got to switch between screens to try to find you. Claire. I see you, Claire.
Yes,
Is that
hello.
you?
Hi.
Hi.
Really enjoyed the talk. Hope your child fares well at university and actually manages to enjoy herself.
God knows.
I
begged her to defer. Has anyone else got kids going to university? I begged her to defer.
One is in second year. She's just gone back for second year in Leeds, and they've just been locked down. So I hope yours is all right. My question was: you've worked with the good, the bad, and the ugly in your career. Who did you turn up and work with and think, I've just had such a thrill that I am actually working with this person? I can't believe it. That's
a great question. I thought you were going to go the other way. There are a couple of people who I think are generally satanic, and I shouldn't tell the story but there's some really two I can think of that are just awful. And the only good thing about this person is that anyone who's ever worked with them is that you have that in common. which is I have stories to tell. But the most extraordinary person I've ever worked with was Jackie Chan. I worked with Jackie Chan. He was a global superstar before I met him, and after I met him, he was even bigger in my imagination. Yeah, but even behind Jackie Chan, there are interesting stories. So he was this guy, most famous person in the world when I worked with him in 2001. Actually, I worked with him when 9/11 happened, because he was so known all over all the Asian countries and in the West. And yet he carried the sandwiches, he moved the lights, he wanted to be there for off, he just wanted to always help, picking up rubbish on the set, never for a second overstep the mark and try to tell this first-time director how to direct action, although Jackie's been doing that, could do it, in his sleep. It's just remarkable and funny and humble, and humble about how he could barely speak English. His character spoke English much better than he did. He was reading off idiot cards by my head. It was a little bit disconcerting. I would chat to him and then realize he didn't understand a word I was saying. Very funny, very kind to all the people. And then one day we're standing by the set, and I said to him, "Hey Jackie, do you remember the first kung fu movie you ever learned?" He goes, "Oh yeah. Pardon my Chinese accent. I hope it's not interpreted as racist, but it doesn't work if it's not in his voice." And he said, "Yeah." He lifts his foot up in the air, leaves his foot hanging. I said, "How old were you?" He goes, "I was 4 years old." I said, "How do you remember that?" He goes, Yeah, because teacher will put big pot of water on all the children's feet, and then the first kid to spill anything, he hit you with bamboo to your foot bleeding." We went, "Jesus Christ." He goes, "Oh yeah, no. Give you 2 big pot of water. All the kids run, but you go fast. First person to spill water, you see these bloody footprints on the wall, children trying to run away." And I said, what kind of school was this? He goes, "Oh, orphanage." I said, "Oh shit, I'm sorry, I didn't know your parents were dead." He goes, "No, they're not dead. They come to them and they say, oh, we get good education, we'll take him here." But lie, we don't do no school. All we do karate, opera, gymnastic, singing, and perform, and then they take us. We go to the White House. We go all over the world, perform. We get no education. They're cruel. They're in a dormitory where we sleep. One person's bed not tidy. They beat you all. Everyone cry every night. And then I understood why he picks up rubbish. Then I understood why he makes 10 films a year. That work ethic, where it came from, the enforced humility. I wish he could let the monster out, like I was saying I let out. That something damaged him so badly when he was young that he wants to please everyone all the time. And there's always a story about that. I worked with the wonderful Lee Evans. I love Lee Evans. We did The Dumbwaiter in the West End, just he and I. And Lee Evans is everybody's favorite clown. He's fantastic. He's Norman Wisdom and, whoever it is. Jerry Lewis built it, in one. And we'd go out for lunch from the rehearsal rooms. And we go out, people go, "All right, Lee." He'd go, "All right, how's it going?" And they go, "I got your DVD." "Oh yeah, your mum said last night in bed." Hey. And we'd get back in the room. He'd just entertain everyone in the street in the West End. Just nonsense. It was like Al Jolson in the street. It was just hundreds of people hanging off scaffolding. And we'd get back in the room. There'd be this silence. And they'd take a bite of a sandwich and they'd go, "Now you'd be a monkey boy." And we go, "Why'd you do it?" He goes, "I don't know. That's what they want, isn't it?" So behind everyone the story, but Jackie Chan was so generous. One day he goes, "Hey Jason," after 9/11 he did a benefit concert on a Sunday, and he raised like 5 million quid to build a hospital or something insane. If he does that every Sunday, something like that. He says, "You'll have time, you'll come and do like a fashion show in Chinese clothes." I went, "Yeah, sure." So I went to this huge arena. Jackie did 5 hours of stand-up, gymnastics, kung fu, dance, and we walked up and down for 3 minutes in Chinese clothes. He gave us all huge expensive gifts, and I went, "Don't give it to the charity." He goes, No, for you." And then we went to, it was in Toronto, the CN Tower, which has a revolving restaurant, and we're up there, and we had this VIP area, and I was like, "Where's Jackie?" Jackie was taking selfies with people for another $100 a time, all to go to the charity all night long. He was. I could do Jackie Chan stories. I'll tell you one more Jackie Chan story. He goes, "I love Jackie Chan." He said he was very, very funny all the time. So we were shooting a scene, and they cut the camera. There was a fly, not meant to be in the scene. It was in the scene. It's bothering us. So I went to try and kill it, and I thought, "Oh Christ, Jackie Chan's watching me. Oh no, now I've got to get this fly." And I missed it. He said, "No, Jason, fly, they see all the way around from the eye. You have to come from behind." I went, "Mate, there's no way you've got a fly in your hand." And he went, "Jackie Chan." And he dropped this dead fly out of his hand. And so later on, we were about to do this stunt. And he just talked me through all of his injuries, you know, I break my leg in 4 places. They put a plaster on, they paint it like jeans. I go straight back to work. I take a piece of my skull. I lose a piece of my skull. They put metal there. They put a wig on. I go back to work 2 days. I break 4 rib. I have a spike sticking out of my rib, and then we turn my side. I shoot from side. Go back to work 2 days. So I'm like, okay. It's impressive stories. I go, what's the most dangerous thing you've ever done? Oh, easy. I do a fight in a train. I take a baby, and I climb out the window of a train. The train goes 90 miles an hour. And I climb out, and I climb onto a roof of a train. I have a fight, kick some guy off train. And then a truck come, also 90 miles an hour, alongside. Put 1 foot on truck, 1 foot on train. Jump onto truck, got a baby. Have a fight. And then the aerial, I grab the aerial, I jump, I swing around. I swing through into window of a truck, kick the driver. The fight with the driver, kick the driver out. Baby, put down, put seatbelt on, click, big laugh. And I went, a real baby? He went, yeah, of course, real baby. A real baby, 90 miles an hour, you're holding a real baby. Yeah, I said, was it your baby? No. I said, somebody gave you their child to do that stunt. He went, yeah, cool. I don't drop baby. I Jackie Chan. I just thought, I loved him. I just thought he was an extraordinary. Well, I learned to tango. I learned to tango over 6 weeks with the world tango champion so that I could shoot a tango in this film. And he said, you do the dance? I said, yeah, I've been working on the choreography. So you show me. And I danced. He went, you're very coordinated. You're a coordinated man. I said, oh, thanks, Jackie. From Jackie Chan. And then he did the whole dance. You'd just seen it once. He did it perfectly.
Oh.
He was something. Anyway, sorry.
Brilliant answer.
Whole night of Jackie Chan stories.
Yeah, thank you.
That's great. We've got a few more questions. I'm going to ask Julia to unmute.
Because I've got nothing to do till June next year.
Okay, great. So we can go all night. We'll start with Julia, who has an Alan Rickman and Latimer related question. So Julia, do you want to unmute yourself, please?
Yes.
There you
Julia.
Oh, thank you. First, my apologies because English is not my native language. So
I'm from Liverpool, not mine either.
And I didn't want to interrupt the Jackie Chan stories. I'm terribly
Somebody has to interrupt my Jackie Chan stories.
No, definitely not. What I wanted to ask is if you worked together with Alan Rickman in Harry Potter. I wanted to ask if he influenced you by becoming a Latimer parent, because he was a Latimer. Others
He was a Latimer parent. Yeah. No, he didn't.
No, he was a Latimer. Yeah.
Sorry, he was a Latimer student.
Yeah.
No, because when I worked with Alan on my daughter had just been born. Actually, they're very kindly on Harry Potter. They scheduled around the birth of my daughter. So at the time, I was very intimidated by Alan, who was the nicest man and incredibly committed to politics and to change and progressive politics. Committed as in he'll turn up and he put his hand in his pocket and support young people starting things out. But no, oddly, he had a huge influence on my acting in that film, because when I got the job, I thought, Christ, what do you do when Alan Rickman is already in a film being sinister? How could you begin to even try to do anything? That's why I wanted the props and the wig and all the rest of it. And then I thought, I've got to come up with a voice. He's got that voice. Who could even try and compete in that arena? And there was a teacher who bullied me horribly at drama school. He used to come up to me and go, one of those Seinfeld close talkers, get right next to my face. And he'd go, nobody likes you, Isaacs. Nobody. None of your friends. They're not your real friends. They hate you. And you're a terrible actor. Nothing will ever happen to you. And I thought, oh, him. And then I combined him with Brian Saul. I don't remember the wonderful art critic Brian Saul, who I think was not to The Manor Born, but developed the set of vowels that were like, the Queen's English turned up to 11. You talk like this, reviewing things, like extra chewing leather at the same time. And I combined the two of them. I thought, I've got to do something extreme if Alan Rickman's in this film. And the first day I did it in rehearsal, my first day shoot ever, was the scene at the end of Chamber of Secrets. So it was with the great Richard Harris and Daniel. And it was the end of the film for my first day. And we ran through a rehearsal, and lovely Chris Columbus came over looking very flustered and embarrassed and went, oh, that was great. Can I ask you a question? I know it's really dumb because I'm American. I don't really know, but like, is there anybody in the world who ever really actually would talk anything like that? And I said, well, I mean, it's exaggerated, but it's a it's a film about wizards, you know, isn't it? Let's face it. And he said, would you mind if I asked the producer? And I said, no. And he went to get David Heyman, who is a lovely, lovely man who made the films. I mentioned that he's lovely, not because I'm trying to sound like a cliche, you know, saying everyone's lovely, because many people aren't. And the atmosphere at work trickles down from the top. And since he ran it all, everyone was always nice to each other. That's not the case on most films. Anyway, David comes to the dressing room. I knew a bit socially. He goes, hey, mate, Chris says you're doing a bit of a funny voice for Lucy. Is that true? I said, well, I'm doing a kind of Brian Sewell. He went, really? Do you think it's good? And I went, well, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was. I mean, yes, I was thinking. Why don't you come to the... He said, do you mind if I come and watch? And I went, do I mind if you come and watch the film that you're producing when we shoot it? No, I think that would probably be all right. And he came out of the set and they was huddling by the monitors. And we ran it through the first time once they'd lit it. And they were muttering to each other. And he came over and they were standing. I think they were about to say to me, please don't do that. It's very, very extreme. And Chris goes, so listen, about the voice. And Daniel goes, I think it's really cool. I think kids would be like doing that voice in playgrounds. And he went, do you? Okay, cool. Let's go with that. And that's why I ended up having that voice. But no, it was, I did, when my kids did go to Latimer, there were other friends who had kids at Latimer that recommended it so highly and loved it. And I knew some of the kids as well. I was a bit horrified, David, wherever you are, to go when I went by the board of famous alumni and it was all actors and chefs. Now, I'm sure that Latimer has pumped out people who've run the world and changed the world more than a bunch of turns and cooks. That's all I can say. Make sure they're up on the board in bold in the future.
They are up on the board now, so you can come back again.
Excellent.
I've got a question from Giles Malcolm here. So he's asked, would you recommend drama school after a degree or launching straight into the industry? It's
a really good question. A lot of friends of mine ask me to speak to their kids or whatever, people who are thinking of getting into the business. I have recommendations about the business that are not to do with going to drama school. First of all, when I went to drama school, I'd done 40 or 50 plays already, or maybe 30, I don't know. So what I got from drama school was my wife, which is not nothing, and the chance to fail behind closed doors and some contacts, but I didn't really need 3 years worth of developing. I would say the most important thing to do right from the beginning is do everything. Don't be an actor. Be a writer, director, editor, actor, producer, scorer. If you've got one of these, you've got a film studio, which I didn't have at your age. And you can make things, you can cut things, you can green screen, you can broadcast, you can score. You should be a hyphenate. Not because you won't get work as an actor, but because the most successful people I know, the happiest people I know, are the people who take the reins creatively. So Brad Pitt, for instance, who I worked with in Fury and I knew a little bit, the stuff that he loves is what Plan B produces, you know, and many of my other friends. So it's not about what you fall back on. So I would say, if you're going to go and do a degree, by the time you finish your degree, you can have made 100 films with your friends and done a bunch of plays, and then decide if you want to go to drama school. I don't think you should, because the holy grail in the film and television industry is what people your age want to watch. So why are portly middle-aged men in Kashmir making it? You should be making it. Lena Dunham made Girls when she was 21. I think make content. You'll learn more by doing and making than you ever will behind closed doors at a drama school, particularly if you've done lots of acting during your degree. But you can get in touch with me directly. We're you know, I'm a Latimer person. You're a Latimer person. You can find me through the school. We can talk about it more. It's a pleasure.
That's really kind of you. Thank you. I've got a question from Aisha.
Hi.
Pronouncing your name.
Hi. I'm a student at Latimer, and I'm.
Is that why you not got your camera on?
Yeah, well, I was kind of doing homework.
So am I.
But
what year are you in?
I'm in year 10.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. I'm in year 10. Okay. But I'm a major Harry Potter fan, and I was just wondering, what was your favorite film that you filmed in Harry Potter?
Oh, well, it was the first one because I was introduced to the world. So most films that you make, when you go in and you're doing a film in some giant set, they've built the bit of the set that's going to be on camera. But for Harry Potter, because they were going to make all of the books, by the time I arrived, they knew already they were a success, they were loved. There was this odd thing on the film set that you only realize in its absence, which is that every film and television program that's ever made has an undercurrent of fear. What if we got it wrong? What if no one's going to watch? What if this is all a terrible mistake? What if our careers are over? And you just didn't get it on Harry Potter. It was a kind of hovercraft. It was buoyed up on this air of confidence. These are great stories. People love them. If we don't pick it up, these are going to be watched forever, and it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
But I'd go in to, you know, you get blasé after a while. But the first film, I'd go in and I'd go, oh my God, this is Dumbledore's office. This is all that I remember on the first day going, what's that? What do these things do? And they go, in the drawers, all the stuff works. And I went, what's that bird? And they went, it's Fawkes. I go, what type of bird is it? And they went, it's a phoenix. And I went, where's it come from? And they went, the robot department. And I went, oh yeah, that's right. No, yeah, there are phoenixes. And I was at drama school with Jared Harris, the wonderful Jared Harris, who won a BAFTA this year. And he, and when Richard Harris, his dad, would come and see the plays that we were in, it was a triple underwear day. It was terrifying. Richard Harris, there's multiple Oscars. So there I was working with Richard. But I'll tell you, my first lines in Harry Potter that I spoke were the last bit of the last scene of Chamber of Secrets, where Dumbledore says to me, he says something like, he says, thank you, that'll be all. And he dismisses me. And I was talking to Richard, and he was telling me these extraordinary jaw-dropping stories about his adventures in the 60s. He might have been drunk for 30 years, but he has perfect recall. And it was, you know, hair-curling, X-rated stories. And they went, guys, you ready for you? And I stepped up onto into his office, this amazing thing, and they roll 5 cameras. It's my first day on this big film, and I'm very excited. And they go, action, and he's got the line, which is, thank you, Lucius, that'll be all. And he doesn't say anything. He just looks at me. Right, well, he's one of those actors. He's going to wait. He's going to do a pause. Whatever, it doesn't matter. People take a minute to get into it, you know. And he still doesn't say anything. He looks at me, and I think, oh my God, he's forgotten the line. Oh no, someone help him out. You know, he's 87 or whatever. Someone say something to him, and he doesn't. No one says anything. And the cameras are rolling, and he's just looking at me. Yeah. This is embarrassing. It's awful. Maybe this happens a lot with him. No one told me, and maybe I distracted him with the stories, and I feel bad. It's my fault. And then I'm beginning to panic for him. And then it occurs to me, maybe it's my line. Maybe I got some of the stories that I'm meant to be speaking now. It's my first day. They've been standing for what feels like an hour. It might be 2 minutes or something, nothing. But just when I begin to sweat, you know, the sweat's pouring off my eyes, my teeth, Richard narrows his eyes and he goes, thank you, Lucius. That'll be all. What you, no wonder you're Richard. No wonder you got all those Oscars. So I remember that day, the first day, so vividly, and I love that film because it was when I met everybody. I met lovely Tom, you know, he was 12, he had his big wide eyes, and, you know, met all the kids. After that, it was still always fabulous, but it was going to work. But those days, I'd walk in and go, Ministry of Magic, what's it going to be like? You walk in and you go, holy, it's the Ministry of Magic, the whole thing. So that's my favorite.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this talk.
Thank you. Now you should be going to bed, surely, at 9:40 in year 10.
I've got an essay due on Friday, so I need to do that.
We've got a nice comment here from Natasha, who says, just wanted to say that the Zoom feels like an intimate shared experience. Thank you.
Thanks very much. That's
people are listening and responding, so that's great. There's
a couple of very friendly faces I can see who have really helped me through. So I was at the BAFTA, the Britannia Awards in Los Angeles. When I lived there for a few years, we did a TV series. We all moved, we all went to school there, and we didn't all go. My kids went to school there. Anyway, I got involved in their charity, which helps a lot in South Central, and this one particular school. It's a blighted area. The kids have nothing. The school has nothing. It's a really so I tried to get some of these kids internships in Hollywood, and I brought them to the Britannia Awards, and I was speaking to this giant room, but they didn't dim the lights, and they were still serving the food, and the microphone wasn't working that well. And I looked down, and George Clooney and Will Smith and Julia Roberts were at the table in front of me, and they looked up at me and they went, and they just smiled, and there was a room full of people completely ignoring me, which I don't really care about. I cared about these kids who'd come from South Central and they put their best clothes on. I was trying to get them internships, and no one was listening. It wasn't their fault. You should never talk to anyone while they're eating in a giant room. But I remember, your faces on here are doing what Will Smith and Julia Roberts did for me. It was amazing, looking up at me and just kind of pouring out support, thinking, I've been there. They've never been there, ever. But they buoyed me up. And when I got off the stage, I walked by them to go back to my table, and Will Smith goes, dude, this is a tough room, and that's a tough crowd. I remember when I started out, and I was thinking, I haven't just started out. How dare you? Anyway, thank you. You know who you are, who've been supporting me through this.
Good. We've got a question from Claude Green. Claude, can you unmute yourself?
Hi.
We've got a few more questions, so we'll just,
My wife goes to bed at 9 o'clock. my teenage children lock themselves in the room, or frankly, are anywhere other than where their father is. So you're all welcome to leave. I will talk about myself endlessly because no one listens in my house.
Hi, Jason.
Hiya.
Is there a director you worked with whose approach surprised you and influenced you in a way you didn't expect?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Claude. Yeah, I worked with Ridley Scott on Black Hawk Down. That was something. He was, you know, you hear rumors about people, but then when you meet them and they are more even than, you know, I'd heard he was very visual. And everything was about the look for him. And I'd seen an exhibition at the South Bank of his drawings that matched the frames of Alien perfectly. But we're making a war film and it was all kind of dynamic and kinetic and stuff. And I went and trained with the Rangers in Fort Benning. You know, and we had the families of the dead we met, and the guys who'd survived the Battle of Mogadishu. They came and they were on the set, and so I expected it to be more spontaneous. But when you'd ask Ridley a question, he'd draw you the answer. So it wasn't that he wasn't interested in the humanity of it, but he had the frame. He could think of the world. He told stories through pictures, not through dialogue, not necessarily through emotion, but through images. But the one that really stuck with me is Paul Greengrass. I'd been his friend. I'd done this film on the BBC for him, which was traditionally shot. I mean, it was a drama doc in that was based in real life. But then he phoned me once. I was sitting in this is the loft here, which was designed to be my office, but my children stole it. Do mention that to Ruby. I was sitting up here and the phone went and he went, "Hello, mate, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm just nothing, just sitting up reading." "Why?" He goes, "What are you doing tomorrow?" I go, "Where are you?" He goes, "I'm in Morocco." I went, "Yeah, you're shooting the Green Zone." I said, "Yeah." I said, "What do you mean tomorrow?" He goes, "There's a part I was going to do using the real Special Forces guys, but it's a bit wordy and I just don't think they can do it. But it's half term. So if you come and bring the kids, it'll take about 2 weeks and do some scenes with Matt." Now, Paul had done Bloody Sunday. I don't know if you have or haven't seen Bloody Sunday. It won him every award in the world. It made him one of the hottest directors in the world. Then he'd done the Bourne films. And then he did United 93, which was completely improvised, start to finish. He used the real air traffic controllers. And, you know, he used, as far as possible, the real people, apart from the people who died on the plane. When he did Bloody Sunday, they were real parachute regiment soldiers. They were the families of the people who died in Bloody Sunday. So he asked me to go out to Morocco. And I was a bit thrown because I knew he was making a film about Iraq. And I got there and I went to the makeup trailer. Again, like I did with Chris Columbus, to come up with a look to show him. And just for a laugh, they had all these Iraqi moustaches there. I said, "Give me a bunch of those." And I cut them up and I gave myself a big kind of shoe moustache like that. And I went to find him on the set. He was shooting some big scene somewhere. And I go, "Hello, mate." And he's an old friend of mine. Hugs and kisses and all that stuff. And he goes, what's with the, what's all that?" I said, "Special Forces, they all have them." He went, "Really?" I said, yeah, no, they all have them. So I found that, yeah. He went, "All right, okay. Should we shoot a scene?" I went, "What?" And I barely read the script. I hadn't read the script. I think I read an outline. I went, "What do you mean shoot a scene?" He goes, "Let's shoot a scene. Have we got the helicopters?" And they said, "Yeah, bring the helicopter. I'm going to shoot a scene with Jace." And I went, "Mate, hold on a second. I don't even know what accent to use. I don't know my character's name." And they goes, "We'll do it. We'll shoot it. If it doesn't go right, we'll shoot it again." Now, I'd seen him. I'd visited him on the set when he shot United 93. And he had the real air traffic controllers shooting when the planes went down in 9/11. And he said to me, "Jace, put a suit on." I went, "What?" And I know he didn't want anyone recognizable in it. He went, "Get behind the camera. Make sure you don't get in front of the camera." And so panicked because these guys are pretending they were calm on the day. And there's no way they were calm. They were terrified. So get behind the camera and start just screaming and shouting and get them jostled up. So I knew he worked through improvisation a lot. But this was nuts. I just got there and I didn't know anything about the story. He goes, "Put a costume on," and the helicopters came around. He said, "Go and get in the helicopters. I'm going to send some soldiers over. Ask them what kind of thing you'd say if you were taking someone's prisoners off them." I went, "This is too vague for me. I can't, my head's going to explode." He went, "Just do it. It doesn't, we'll shoot it again." And I got onto a Huey, which they then later with computer graphics made look like a Black Hawk. And I got on and there were 6 soldiers in there. You don't sit in it, you sit out of it with a little bungee attached to your belt and hooked to the thing. That's all that holds you in. There were Moroccan Air Force guys who didn't speak any English. They were being given orders in Arabic in their headphones. It took off, it tilted, went around the air, and it was deafening. And I said to these guys, "What do you say when you want to take someone's prisoners off them?" And they went, "I can't hear you." And I was thinking, shit, I'm going to shoot a scene. I'm just going to let everyone down. This is a big Hollywood movie. And I went, how do you take people's prisoners? "I don't know what you're saying." So anyway, the helicopter comes in to land and I jump out and I run up and there's Matt Damon, who I'd met for 2 minutes at Paul's house a year before or something. And I go, "Give me the prisoners, man." And he goes, "What?" And I go, "Give me the prisoners." And he stands there and I stand there and I go, "Get the prisoners." And we run off, and Paul goes, okay, good, cut. What were you doing? I said, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. What do you mean, what am I doing? He said, well, what did you stop and talk to Matt for? I said, I don't know. You said take Matt's place. He goes, he's nothing. Punch him in the face, kick him, or ignore him, or go and take a piss in the doorway, or stay in the helicopter, or have a Coke. But just do something. Don't stop and talk to him. That's like a movie thing. I said, I don't know what you've taken. What? So, but what about that? Can you use any of that? He goes, maybe. I said, do you want me to stop in the same place? He goes, okay, here's the thing. I've changed since we worked together. There's no continuity. There's no script. There's no blocking. It never has to be the same twice. Now, for anybody who knows the film business, you know, I pride myself in making up in craft what I lack in talent. I can hit a mark. I can say lines that are written down and make it seem like I made them up. But when you take all those things away, all you've got left is telling the truth honestly. So I go, Matt, so can I push you? Matt goes, you can hit me. I get back on the helicopter. He goes, Paul goes, one thing, get out of the helicopter quicker because it might do one shot. And when the helicopter lands, it's too late for you. It takes too long for you to start running. So we get in the helicopter, it flies around. I unclip myself when we're a long way off the ground and we hit the ground. I jump out and I run up. Matt comes up and I pin him down. He comes up and I punch him and then we tussle and I wrestle and I put my foot in his neck and all this stuff. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, this is Matt Damon. What am I doing to him? And I can see Paul smiling by the monitor. And we get back in the helicopter, go away, and he goes, cut. He goes, it's great, it's fantastic. We got that. Now we'll do close-ups. I go, Matt, you all right? He goes, yeah. And he's black and blue. And later on that night, I'm sitting with the soldiers who I then got to know. And they're telling stories, you know, they hadn't all served together. They were telling just jaw-dropping, heartbreaking stories about death and destruction of their friends and IEDs and massacres they'd been in or been part of, or, you know, just you know, the stories, the anecdotes were blood and guts up to the neck. And I said, what's the, when were you most scared? What's the scariest thing that happened to you? And they looked at each other, they went, helicopter. I went, what helicopter? I went, no, that helicopter today. And I went, why? And they went, you unclipped about 100 meters in the air. I said, yeah, well, I thought that's because we need to get out running. He goes, you don't unclip till you hit the ground. We could have all fallen out of that thing at any point. I said, but you all did it. They went, well, because you did. I said, well, I'm not really your boss. I'm just an actor playing your boss. You're a bunch of idiots. So that film, Every Day, I ended up staying for 7 months. I had 1 million dialogue scenes. And I went around to Paul's house. He goes, okay, watch this as an actor, not as my friend, okay? No, watch this as my friend, not as an actor. I go, why? He goes, because I've cut all your stuff. I went, okay, sure. And he'd cut all the dialogue. And it was just an action thing. But he's an extraordinary man, driven by a desire to tell the truth in a dynamic way. I know he does other commercial films, but when he does his real life stories, there's nobody like him for authenticity. So him, I would say.
Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. I've got a question from Celia, which I'm going to read out for her. Her mic's not working. She says, I'm a huge fan of the I'm a huge fan of the OA and have a unique character. How do you go about empathizing with or getting into the mindset of complex characters like that?
It's a great question. He's the most interesting person I think I've ever played. If you haven't seen it, there's nothing more nauseating than an actor telling you to watch something that they're in, but I'm only a small part in it, so I can heartily recommend. There's a series called The OA on Netflix. There's 2 seasons of it. It's written by and stars, co-written by and stars, an extraordinary woman called Britt Marling, who I think tells stories unlike anybody else. The subject matter and the approach, her approach to narrative is extraordinary. And the complications of the characters. For people who haven't seen it, I don't want to spoil the story, but this is a man who is doing on the surface of it some terrible things, Celia. That's absolutely right. He's doing some things that don't seem right. But he knows that if he's right, and if he carries this through, the benefit to mankind is going to be so enormous, unlimited. It's going to change everything that anybody ever knows about death, about science, about life. And so he knows that he's paying a moral cost for that, and that something pretty rotten is happening to a few people, and he's doing that thing for those few people. But he's looking in his own mind at the cost benefit, you know, that no one will ever have to die again, possibly, and that everyone can live their best lives. And the benefit of that so outweighs it. He's had to inure himself. He's had to somehow vaccinate himself. He's had to cauterize those parts of himself that would feel their pain. And what's brilliant about her writing is that into that mix, she throws a woman that he is doing these terrible things to, but he falls in love with her. He thinks she should be able to step outside of that and also appreciate his genius. And if that isn't three-dimensional writing. I don't know what it is. So how do I empathize with them? I just find out what they think, why they think they're doing the right thing. And that's always true. There may be that they just think the world is Darwinian and the strong should dominate the weak. Nobody judges a lion for eating a wildebeest at a watering hole. No one goes, that's so cruel, it's so weak. Well, there are human beings, unfortunately, like that in the world. And so I just find how they justify things to themselves and what demons they're dealing with. But do watch it. If you're looking for something to watch, it's amazing, and she's amazing.
Thank you. I'm adding that to my watch list. We've got our final question from Jane Stringfellow. So Jane, can you unmute yourself, please?
Jane, no pressure, but it's the final question, so it better be just maybe the best question that's ever been asked by anyone.
Well, Jason, I was actually at Bristol with you, so I found
hi.
I mean, I haven't seen you since then, and I found it very.
You look exactly the same.
Well, so do you. And you talked about how you experienced Bristol, and it was the Sloan Ranger's Handbook and everything. And I remember you.
Was that your memory?
Well, I that was part of it, but I remember you as being, this very cool sort of guy. So it's very interesting to hear what you felt like on the inside. But I also remember the many plays you did, and I remember you a performance of Bent that you were in, and also a new play that might have been written by Jeremy Brock about a rent boy. The
Glory of Love, written by Simon Jones. Yeah.
Yes, and thinking about that, and some of the things that you said tonight made me think. Well, have you revisited roles that you played early in life, perhaps when you were at Bristol, or at that other time when you were, as you said, you did hundreds of plays in just years, and then played them much later, or a little bit later?
I don't know quite how much I could charge as a rent boy in my late 50s. I don't know who'd be lining up, but it's lovely to see you, and thank you for asking about. I haven't revisited those parts, no, because
no, maybe not those ones, but other ones you did at the time, maybe.
Those plays, no, but I do. I suppose I have to wind it up, but I will tell a story about The Glory of Love because it was really interesting to me. It was a play written by someone who went on to be a critic, I think. And it was, we thought it was very clever. There was a Tory cabinet minister, there was a rent boy. I ended up getting castrated with a cheese wire. And because I can do magic, I had palmed a blood bag. You'd seen me naked. And then I put my underpants on and the guy leant over me and blood exploded. So people vomited and screamed and ran out and stuff.
Yes, I remember that.
And they said, should we take it to Edinburgh? And I didn't know what that was. And it was the Edinburgh Festival, it was my first Edinburgh Festival. I then became addicted to the Edinburgh Festival. And we opened at the Edinburgh Festival at lunchtime to 5 people. And I think there were 6 people in the play. One of them was at the Bristol Vic Theatre School. And he said, you don't have to perform. We said, what? He said, you don't have to perform. If there's less people in the audience than there are on the stage, you don't have to perform. And I can't remember who'd taken us up there. They went, what are you talking about? We're at the Edinburgh Festival. This is not the old Vic. Get out there and do the play. Anyway, went out and did the play. And in those days, there were only 2 ways to get a review in Edinburgh. One was the broadsheet, which was the Scotsman, a serious newspaper. And the other was the tabloid, the Evening News. And the Scotsman came out at midnight. And you were very, very lucky to get a review, because even then there were thousands of shows on, and there were only 3 or 4 reviewers. So we opened to 5 people, and that night we all went to a thing called the Fringe Club, which is in the Edinburgh Union Bar. It's ankle deep in beer and sausages, and a lot of people eyeing each other up. And at midnight, they came in with piles of the Scotsman newspaper, and they threw them on the floor. And everyone descends like vultures and rips it apart. And we had got a review, which is extraordinary on your first day to get a review. And it said, this is the biggest pile of audio I've ever seen in my life. It's what gives student drama a bad name. Avoid it like the plague. I remember, I can quote it. And we were all incredibly depressed, as you can imagine. And we went up onto Arthur's seat, drank a bottle of tequila. I think there may have been some soft drugs involved. And we came down at 5 o'clock in the morning, so just sorry for ourselves, knowing our summer was ruined. And there were piles of the tabloid newspaper outside sweet shops. And we grabbed one, we opened it. The owners weren't there yet. And it was the Evening News. And amazingly, we had a review in that as well. And it said, #1 pick of the Fringe, electrifying theatre, queue around the block the rest of us to watch the stars of tomorrow, pulls no punches. I remember both reviews. I remember them because we put them on a poster, both reviews, and we fly posted all over Edinburgh. We went, these 2 people saw the same show, make your own mind up. And we sold out. But it was a very, very, very early lesson that nothing anybody says means anything. Nothing that's printed, no review should ever give you a big head, no criticism should give you a small head, and that never do it for the effect, do it for the feeling. And so I was in Peter Pan, that I said went on for ages. And while it was going on, studio heads would fly out because it was a very expensive film. And they go, dude, get used to flying private, okay? You're flying your last commercial flight. You won't be walking down the street. You would be checking in a different name. Let me tell you something. After this movie, life. And I was already 40 and I was already sober. I don't drink. And I was able to go, I'm on a beach with my wife and our newborn daughter. And it's a wonderful life I'm leading, and I'm making this film. And nothing that happens from this is important. This experience is all that counts. And the film was a catastrophic flop and took about 25p of the Green Shield stamp. And it didn't matter to me, but I'd had the experience. And I think I started to learn that lesson even at 20 when I did The Glory of Love, going, it doesn't matter that some people think it's fabulous, some people think it's terrible. Am I enjoying this? Am I doing it truthfully? You know, am I in the moment? And I think in these difficult COVID times, which I don't know how everyone else is handling it, I'll confess, I'm not handling it that well quite often. I'm finding it very difficult. You know, enormously privileged to have a roof over my head and can afford the Latimer fees and you know, food in the fridge. But there's times it's very difficult. And the thing that is of use, the only thing to come back to, is to be present and to be grateful and to be in the moment. And I began to learn that doing that play. So thank you for reminding me of it.
Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. We're getting tons of wonderful messages of thanks coming through on the chat, and I'll echo those. Thank you so much, Jason. It was fascinating to hear more about your career behind the scenes of your work. Jason has been so generous with his time in support of so many great charities, large and small, and we're really appreciative that he's taking the time to support our bursaries appeal tonight. Thank you to all of you for joining us, for your great questions and engaging with us tonight. Thank
you for the money. This is about raising money, and just by coming, you've given money to, you know, it's a good cause, and it helps our kids and it helps other kids. And frankly, in these times, helping is the only thing that helps. You know, helping other people is what lifts your spirits.
Absolutely.
Sorry, Ruth. Sorry.
No, just by being here tonight, you've raised more than £700 for our bursaries appeal, and that means a lot. Every donation is invaluable to the work that we do, and we can't thank you enough for that. As David mentioned at the beginning, we are holding our events virtually now, and this series of virtually speaking events is continuing, and you can see the full program is in our chat facility now. I'll just point out one of the highlights. Next Thursday, author and Latvian parent Ariana Newman dives into the secrets of her father's past, spying for the Allies in plain sight in war-torn Berlin. Talks about the Holocaust and the courageous choice to build anew. And so Ariana will be discussing her new book, which is called When Time Stopped, A Memory of My Father's War and What Remains. And I hope you'll be able to join us. Over on the chat bar, you'll also see a link to the donations page, which Jason kindly reminded us of. And you'll also see a link to the video library so that you can catch up on any of the recordings from any of the talks we've had so far. And this one from tonight will be up there in a couple of days if you want to rewatch it. Sadly, this brings us to the end of our evening's talk. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much, Jason, for sharing this inspiring and very entertaining talk.
Thanks for listening. When I meet all of you, I won't speak. I'll listen to you all night, I promise.
We hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.